Welcome to the Healing Place podcast, a space filled with inspirational stories of hope, along with practical advice for your healing journey. Your host is Teri Wellbrock, trauma warrior, writer, speaker, blogger, therapy dog handler, and founder of the Sammy's Bundles of Hope project. As a survivor and a thriver, Teri's mission is to shine the light of hope into the world by interviewing insightful guests from across the globe. Please stay tuned at the end of today's interview as we honor our sponsors. The Healing Place podcast is a fiscally sponsored project of Fractured Atlas. Now, here's your host and trauma warrior, Teri Wellbrock.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Healing Place podcast. I'm your host, Teri Wellbrock, and very excited to have with me today Jessica Miles, author of Monty's Day in Court, which I read, and I'm just so excited to have Jessica here today to talk to us about this book and the story behind the book. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you, Teri. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And before we hit record, just talking about, I just think this book is just, what a gift to families and children to help them understand what can be a very scary process.
Yeah. And for kids who don't even understand the world of courts, or, it's just even more daunting in that aspect. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. For many of my listeners, they know my story through the years. I've been recording this episode or this podcast for 30 years now, and I talk intermittently about my own trauma history. But when I had to testify at age 22 at a murder trial, it was terrifying. And I was a 22-year-old adult who had been through a lot in my life, but walking in that courtroom, I just remember being, I was shaky, I was scared, I didn't know what to expect, and this book really walks through even like who the judge is, who the court reporter is. So do you want to talk about your inspiration for the book and what the book's about?
Sure. So we adopted an 8-year-old from foster care. He had already been removed, or he was removed from his mother, but prior to that, or 2 years earlier, he had been removed, or his father had been incarcerated for abuse. And the process of that took many years to come to trial. We had no idea if and when our son would ever be called to testify. And, by the time he was actually called to testify, we had adopted him from foster care to give him the stability and everything else he needed. And others who were in this case were in foster care still and were not called. So it wasn't an even subpoena process. But I know I was terrified when my son got the subpoena, because I knew how scary it could be, maybe from TV or what I thought in my mind. And I thought, well, they can't possibly put a child up in front of somebody in court. That's just too traumatizing. But I guess you have the right to face your accuser. Who knew? So, I thought, oh, well, they won't make him do it in person. Maybe they'll make him do it over video. Nope. And we traveled out of state for this as well. So we were lucky in that we live in a major city and there was a court preparation program. So we had this amazing resource where we were able to go to a class and sort of learn who the people in court were. But the class was really generic. It wasn't like in an abuse case, you might be asked these types of questions. It just sort of talked about who was in court and gave us that information. And that was huge, just to have that. And then we were also put in touch with Bikers Against Child Abuse. And I was aware of what they did from other foster parents, who had helped their foster children feel safe. But I wasn't really aware of how they worked with children who were going through a court process. And I got to tell you, between those two resources, if we hadn't had them, I would have just been so much more worried. I will tell you that, is this a good time to go into, how BACA was there for us?
Yes. And again,
Okay.
I just
Yeah.
find, as I read that, I think it was one of those things that I had heard about in passing,
Yeah.
maybe read an article, and, it was just it kind of glazed
Yeah.
over it. And as I read this, I thought, wow, that's pretty powerful stuff right there, to have this presence
Yeah, presence.
in your
And a lot of
life
people
and
have,
in your child's life.
yeah, a lot of people have misconceptions about them, but they are a worldwide organization. So they are available almost everywhere. But for us specifically, first they came and met with us and learned about the process, or what we were going through. And then they did sort of a induction or initiation for our son to become part of the BACA organization. They call it like a level 1. And that process involves a lot of the BACA members showing up at the house, um, telling the child how important they are and how they're going to be there for them, giving them a BACA blanket and a BACA vest with
Yeah.
their own patch, and a BACA bear. And soon, perhaps, they'll be giving out Monty's Day in Court. They're reviewing it at the international level for them.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So fingers crossed there. But, they were just such a presence. If our son had wanted them to stand outside of our house at night, they would have done it until he said he felt safe.
Yeah.
They do that. They even would have traveled out of state with us, following us if we were driving in the car. They, instead, and I should take a step back, our court process was delayed like 4 times over 6 months, which was also incredibly stressful for my son. So here he gets like ready to go, and then they say, oh, delayed, ready to go, oh, delayed. And BACA kept showing up, and BACA kept, they'd show up with a hamburger, or they'd show up and just, whatever. And then they have these events for kids as well. So they treat you like family. And, it has been years now, and they are still in touch with us, and they still ask about him, and we're still invited to their events. So they are sort of part of our family still. And that says so much about the people that they are. In my discussion guide, I'm adding a little bit more information for the book. I'm adding a little bit more information about the process that their members go through in order to qualify to be, a BACA support person, because it's extensive. These are people who really care about children and safety of children, and, have had probably something similar happen to them in their lives. And so they are sympathetic, they are caring, and they may be gruff looking on the outside, but they are the biggest teddy bears in the world. So I don't know. I just can't say enough good things about how they supported us and how that court program supported us, leading up to this, eventual trial.
That's beautiful. I mean, just absolutely beautiful. And again, what a gift they've given families and children. Were they present in the courtroom?
They are not recommended to go into courtrooms. I know in some cases they do, but they actually stood up. Well, let me first say, they met us at the airport out of state. The one for that, the BACA for that state. They followed our car to our hotel, and then they met up with us several times while we were there. We ended up being there for like 10 days waiting for the trial to start. I mean, this needs to be part of the ACEs training for prosecuting attorneys, because they kept us out there so long when, we could have flown out the night before,
Right.
instead of adding that extra trauma of waiting for my son. But BACA came and, took us on little outings while we were waiting. And then on the day of the trial, they met us in the morning and they walked us over to the courthouse, and they stood outside that courthouse like centuries. I mean, they were there in every way. And I got to tell you, my son was worried about his father breaking out of jail and getting to him. So this was a huge way that he made him feel safe. There's a picture in the book of someone pulling the bars apart, and that was actually how he felt. He
Yeah.
really felt like, oh, he could get to me if he wanted to. But
That image really struck me when I read the book. Because truly, as someone who has testified against someone that went away to prison for a long time, that was one of my biggest fears, was
yeah,
him, that same sort of visual, and it really was powerful for me.
yeah.
Yeah.
In a lot of these cases, they do not go to court. They strike plea deals. So it's pretty rare for it to go this long. And it's also pretty rare, the sentencing that happened in this case, which is, over a lifetime long. And hopefully that does lead my son to feel safer. But a lot of these cases do not go to court,
Right.
but they might go all the way up to court. So a child might need to be preparing for court in the eventuality that they do. But if they don't, then they understand the things that are going on just in case, or behind the scenes. And they're not felt like I don't have any control over what's going on.
Right. Well, and I love how you listed the questions that might be asked as well. And
Yeah.
I mean, because it's scary process.
Yeah. You know, they had a diagram of my son's childhood home, and they were asking him questions like, did it happen here? Did it happen here?
Oh, yeah.
And, I will say that I was worried how harshly, or how aggressive they would be with my son, in questions, and they were kind. So I'm very thankful for that. But, maybe that's not always the case. Could be scarring for a child to get asked some of those questions, or triggering even.
Sure. I'm grateful that we're becoming a more trauma-informed world,
Thank
in
you.
that I think more agencies and court systems and so forth are working in the best interest of the child,
Mhm.
and keeping the child in mind. Obviously, much more work to be done in that arena, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm finding a lot of judges and victim services that are very interested in this book as well. So I'm really pleased to see the breadth, to who it appeals to. So that's good.
Yes, wonderful. How's he doing now? Does he talk to a therapist? I mean, is he is it one, like it's done, it's over, it's behind him now, and he's moved on?
No, I wouldn't say he's moved on. I would say, in the world of adverse childhood reactions, or it, it or adverse childhood experiences, I feel like testifying should be a new one. Like, I feel like it's just salt in the wound for a kid that has ACEs. And um, I feel like emotionally it set him way back. Um, and yes, he sees a therapist very regularly. He's actually in a therapeutic program for school. And I think that really helps, because, working with people who are trauma informed, it's just the most important thing you can do for kids, or
Yeah.
anybody who's gone through these things. But no, I wouldn't say it's behind him, but we did
Right.
this book a lot of ways to show, what an important thing he did. And in the end, I allude to the fact that, like, oh, this is hard for me, but maybe I can help someone else. And that's really, we tried to make the lemons into lemonade with this book. And that's one of the reasons I chose not to draw any income from the sale of this book. I chose to make it an experience that would help others, because um, it's just, I feel like it's the only thing left to do. I didn't feel like I could make a profit on the backs of others' pain. Um, so I chose to self-publish it, and I did that through Amazon. It was my first book that I've ever written, and I think my son, he's really proud that he gets to, like, I mean, even though he doesn't talk about it with friends or anything, but he's proud that his bravery is shown in this way, and I feel like that's the best thing we could have done. And of course, he loves BACA still too, so he's really excited about
Right.
the extra money that comes from Amazon. Doesn't let you price at cost. They make you do like a slight additional amount, and that amount we give to BACA.
Okay.
He's glad that
So
we were able to give that.
your proceeds go to BACA. Okay.
Yeah, all proceeds. And then I've given them a number of books. But yeah, I mean, I just felt like this is the only way to make that lemonade out of the lemons.
I love it. I wrote my daughter and I, when she was in 4th grade, we wrote a little children's book about our therapy dog.
Oh,
Before she became a therapy dog, she was in training. And so we did KDP, which that is that Kindle
mhm.
Direct publishing through
Yeah,
Amazon. And so, yeah, I understand the process, and it's, but it is such a gift to your children, because, oh my gosh, she was so proud. We would do book readings at schools, and, because she was a junior author. And,
yeah.
yeah, so
I love
yeah.
how easy they've made it. But I will say, I had no clue as to how to go about this process.
Me
And
either.
I had this story in my head, of course. It's not one for one with my son's experience, but it's largely based on it. And originally it was, he was going into foster care, and there was a bunch of other aspects, and I pared it down. But I didn't do that without the help of Gina D, who is also a foster mom that I got in contact with in our local foster organization here in the city. And I could not have done any of this, especially not the amazing graphics that she helped put together, because she brought it to light. And we didn't want, we wanted to, well, we didn't want we wanted him to we wanted to make him ambiguous, race ambiguous, but also appeal to more of a Latinx, or, a different, to as many people as possible, we'll say.
Right.
And, we weren't specific about the abuse, and we weren't specific about who he is. So we just tried to make it as broad reaching as possible. But I cannot say enough about how the illustrations just came to life, or the story came to life, because of the illustrations. So,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
another foster mom who really understood. So
Right.
that was really
Wonderful.
an amazing, thing that we worked on together. We're so proud.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, and as you should be, because again, it's just such a gift to the world and to families and children. So yeah, thank your son for his bravery, and you for putting it together. So
Yeah, group effort.
yeah, and one of the things, when I asked about him seeing a therapist, is because I really wanted you to talk about the re-traumatization part, because testifying, I love that you said it should be the 11th ACE, or I think they've added some other ones like the 15th ACE, because it is going back and having to relive the trauma,
Yeah,
and but it's also triggering in its own right as well.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
And also, it also gives the child a chance to feel like they did stand up and do something for themselves.
Yeah.
And, he would, he would say, well, why didn't I think of doing this? Or why didn't I think of doing that? And I said, you were just a child. Even an adult might not have done that. Don't be so hard on yourself. And then, we thought, okay, well, we don't have to have him testify. Like, they can't force a child to testify. Apparently they do, though. Apparently
Wow.
they even put babies on people's laps and bring them to court. I mean, it's just strange, that world. But we thought, no, let's give him a chance to do that thing, to be empowered and stand up and speak on his own behalf for once, because he was helpless before, but he's not helpless now. So we
Yeah.
gave him a chance, but I can't, it's still triggering, and it's still, God, what an emotion to have to do it against your parent, the person you relied on.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we
Yeah.
just,
Well, and that brings up a really interesting fact, because what you just said, we were talking about it being almost its own ace, is that it could be part of the resilience score, and that the testimony itself in finding that courage really, I'm sure, really helped build up his resilience and build up that self-confidence, and yeah, just a pride of him in himself for doing it and finding that courage.
yeah, it was really something. So
Yeah.
we celebrated a lot after this. Even during, we said, okay, during that week, you can eat dessert with every meal or something, just to whatever, like celebrate his accomplishment, in some
Yeah.
way. And, he actually got a stipend and he was able to buy something with it. But, that's not true in every case. So, it's hard to write a book that's going to work for every situation. um, and sometimes you might be testifying on something you saw, and it still had an impact on you, even if it wasn't physical. So it's hard to write a book for every situation, but you just try to do what you can. I've had people actually ask me, you should write a book with a facility dog instead of BACA, or you should write a book about this type of trauma or that type of trauma. And I said, well, okay.
Yeah.
Or they say, what is Monty's next adventure going to be? And I said,
Right. Right.
I hope it's going to be a happy one. Like Monty goes to a museum.
It would be a great, yeah, Monty series.
Yeah.
The Monty resilience after, the trauma part of it. Yeah.
Well, as part of this pandemic downtime, my husband has also decided to write a book, but it's more of an adventure, young adult adventure book. But our son is also the lead character. So
Oh,
it's very exciting.
that's so awesome. I
Yeah.
love it. What great role models and examples. Yeah. For standing up and, well, making your dreams come true. And yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Very cool. So anything else that you wanted to touch upon before we close out for today?
Sure. A lot of people have asked me what who is this book appropriate for? And, or age wise, whatever child is able to read it. It's not the type of book that's going to be read by a child by themselves. A caring adult should be with a child while they read it, like
Yeah.
a CASA or a gal or attorney or a counselor or a therapist or a teacher or whoever. But it's not just to hand it off to a kid and let them read it on their own book. It's meant for whoever thinks the child is ready for that type of information, and whoever is able to explain to the child that the circumstances that are applicable to them.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have BACA in their community, or maybe they're doing virtual court. I don't know, but you know it's not a handoff book. It's very much meant to be like a book that's read together. That being said, having the book for a child to take home and read, where they can refer back to it and feel like, I'm not alone, this other kid did it. I think that's really important. And that was something I noticed when my son was reading his court workbook on his own. He would refer back to it occasionally, just to like, okay, now who's this? But it's sort of a reference guide for them. But
That's what you took the words out of my mouth. I was just going to say, some more like a reference guide.
yeah.
Yeah, where a child needs guidance and understanding it, and yeah.
And they might get different things from it at different times. So like after the trial, they might go back and say, oh, okay, it's okay for me to be confused, but that didn't mean anything, before the trial. I didn't know, and now I'm feeling that way, and I see this other, Monty was feeling this way, so I feel like, okay, that makes sense. But I gotta say, what I'm really worried about right now is all those cases that are going unreported.
Yes.
And I feel like after this pandemic, there's going to be such a backlog, or I hope that there's, reports that come out, but, I think there's going to be a big backlog of cases. And, I worry about those kids getting that chance and not losing it, losing the chance to stand up and be brave. So
Yeah, I've heard the same thing, that with this pandemic, unfortunately, the frustration levels for adults who have lost jobs or income, or children being at home,
stressors.
just the stress of trying to school children, even if you're working from home as a parent. And yes, and that now that children are being seen physically in many schools, schooling from home, the teachers don't see, the physical abuse signs or the other signs that they're trained to see and can report. And so that they're saying that, yes, there is,
That really worries
the
me.
numbers are rising.
Yeah, we're gonna need extra support for those children going through what they're going through, and
Yeah, for sure.
hopefully this is just one way I can help support.
Well, again, yeah, beautiful, wonderful. All right.
Thank you.
Well, so how do people get in touch with you? How do they find the book? And yeah, if you happen to have a BACA resource, how can people find that as well?
So the book, information on the book can be found at montysdayincourt.com. It can be found on Amazon in English and in Spanish. And I can be contacted through the website. If you're considering buying the book and would like to see a preview of it first, I'm happy to provide one for you. I don't want nonprofits or people who help children spending any money on something that's not right for them. I want them to spend money on the right things that are right for them. Again, because I'm not drawing an income on this book, I'm putting it out there as a resource for people to consider.
Right.
And I am happy to chat with people about it. So
Wonderful.
anytime.
All right. Cool. Well, again, it's just such a pleasure to have you here talking to me about this today. And again, thank you for this beautiful gift that you're giving to families and to children, and the gift you've given your son. I mean, just beautiful.
Well, he's a brave guy.
Sounds like it. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. And remember, until next time, be gentle with yourself. Thanks.
Good advice.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening today to the Healing Place podcast with your host and trauma warrior, Teri Wellbrock. If you enjoyed this episode and want to learn more about Teri, her mission, and the Hope for Healing journey, visit Teri's website at www.teriwellbrock.com. Thank you for liking, commenting, sharing, and offering your reviews on our YouTube channel, audio outlets, and Facebook page. And as Teri reminds us, until next time, remember, be gentle with yourself.